Hello, this is Russ from Sound Bookkeepers, and I'm here to talk to you about the best way to work with your accountant or CPA or tax preparer. A lot of people, when they first come to me looking for bookkeeping services, they think that bookkeeping and accounting are the same thing. And while it's true that bookkeeping is a piece of accounting, bookkeepers and accountants are very different people. Your bookkeeper does all the record keeping, and your accountant does the tax filing with the IRS at the end of the year, or maybe if you're not on a calendar year, other times, but usually in April. So everybody has to file a 1040 tax return in April, usually. Of course, you can file extensions, but you know what I'm saying. So if you have a small business and you have a bookkeeper and you have an accountant, that's great. A lot of times, people don't have both bookkeepers and accountants. Sometimes they don't have either one. Accountants play a very important role in that they know all of the rules that the IRS has laid out in terms of how to do things, and those rules are constantly changing. So you have to keep up each year, even throughout the year, on the changes happening. Especially last year, 2021, lots of things changed that required accountants to actually redo tax returns that they had already done because the IRS changed some rules about what was taxable and what was not with unemployment and the PPP loans, employee retention tax credits. So when you have a bookkeeper, you want your bookkeeper to keep track of things in a way that's going to make it easy for your accountant to do the taxes at the end of the year, and also easy for you as the business owner to look at the financials and gain some understanding about what's happening in your business. So how do you best work with an accountant or a CPA or a tax preparer? The way to do that is to think ahead. What are they going to need? When are they going to need it? When are you going to have it available, and how do you get it to them? Those kind of things are really important. Also, what questions are they going to have for you? You can almost predict what the questions are and kind of already know the answers to those things before you go to them when it's time to do your taxes. So here's a couple things I'll tell you that you need to know. Accountants get very busy around February, March, April. Sometimes they don't even take on new clients anymore because they're so busy. Sometimes they don't even answer the phone or return phone calls because they're too busy. Now, after the April deadline, and last year it got extended, but usually, there's a deadline when taxes have to be filed, usually April 15th. If you file an extension, which they often will do for you, but if they're not answering your call and you need an extension, you can do it. It's a pretty simple form. You just fill it out and send it in. If you file an extension, what you should know is that it's an extension of time to file, not time to pay. Any taxes that were due from the previous year, you're supposed to pay those even when you file the extension. And if you don't, you can get penalized by the IRS. Now, if you file an extension, you get an automatic 4 months. So that's April, May, June, July, August, right? So you've got 4 months to file your taxes. Then if you still can't get it done by then, you can file an additional extension, but still all of this is only extending the time to file. Now, as a business owner, it's not actually really good to wait that long because you want to use the numbers from the previous year to kind of give you some insight into the next year. But if you gotta wait, you gotta wait. My question is, why are you waiting? Usually it's because you don't have your records together. If that's the case, maybe you need a good bookkeeper. The reason I say this is because a good bookkeeper is going to have all your numbers in order when it's time to file your taxes, and you won't be waiting. We try and get everything done by January 31st. In Washington, actually, January is a big month because you've got Washington Department of Revenue, monthly, quarterly are both due, and then you also have Employment Security and Labor and Industries. You've got the Washington PFML. Now we also have city returns that have to be done, like Seattle, Everett, Bellevue, the B&O tax. All of those things are due in January. So it's a big month. It's really tough to, focus on anything else when you're dealing with these things. So if you can get all your numbers done really by the end of January, you're doing good. Your accountants are going to be happy. They're going to charge you less, number one, because you'll have everything in order. And if you have it organized, not only are you going to, get the benefit of having it done, but also when you're looking through the numbers, you're going to have a lot more insight into what's going on in the next year, as well as your accountant is going to be able to get you the most tax benefit because they'll have sufficient time to work with you to help make sure you've got those numbers in order. So it's a really good idea to know which tax form you're going to be filing. I talk to people sometimes and they don't even know what tax form they file. You might be an 1120S or an 1120C or a Schedule C. You have to know which one of these you're going to be, and usually it's the same one it was last year, and so you can just look at the last one. But each of those tax forms has different categories on it, and if your bookkeeping records are being kept in different categories than the ones that go on those forms, your accountant is not going to know which one to put where necessarily, and they might have to ask you, and that costs you extra money because they're having to take the time, and of course it delays things as well. The next thing to know about working with your tax preparer is that they're very busy people, and a lot of the questions that you have, you can get answered by somebody else if they're not able to get back to you. Like, can I deduct this or can I deduct that? Most of those things you can find just by typing that into Google, but if you have a good bookkeeper, obviously they're the ones to ask because they know most of those things. But really your accountant is the one who's going to defend you if you ever get audited. So if you ask something like, can I deduct this meal? Well, really the answer should come from your accountant, because if you get audited and the IRS agent says, what's that? And you say, well, that's a meal, and they say that's not allowed, your accountant's the one who put it there. So it's good to know who's responsible for what when it comes time to really, prove what's going on. But if you're not being audited, then really it doesn't matter what you put because nobody's looking. Records have to be kept for many years, and a lot of things fade over time too. So like receipts, they fade over time. Your memory definitely fades over time. And so record keeping is good, but electronic record keeping is the most important thing these days because things get lost, destroyed, like I said, they fade. So it's a good idea to keep copies of your receipts on paper that can't fade, and really electronic copies is even better. I don't really think it's a good idea to put all of your receipts in QuickBooks unless that's easy for you, because you might have a lot of receipts and that's very time consuming and kind of unnecessary. There's lots of other tools, even Dropbox or Box, you can take pictures of things and upload them directly to a folder. That's going to be sufficient in the case of an audit. But if you are using QuickBooks, great. You can go ahead and just put all your receipts in there. There's also other tools like Expensify that you can use to keep track of things. Now, certain things you don't really need to keep the records as closely, like if you go to Home Depot a lot because you're in construction, you're not going to need to keep necessarily all your Home Depot receipts if you're using your Home Depot credit card, because you can just look them all up online and see what your purchases were. So certain things, if you have the ability to go online and get the records, it's not as important for you to keep paper copies of the records as well, like Square or Stripe or Clover or your bank records. These are all things that you can get online. The things that you really want to keep are those important things that you're not going to be able to get if you need them. And I'm just going to let you kind of think through what those things might be because they're different with everybody. Now, your accountant's going to need to know things like stock trades, or whether you have bought a house or a car, or if you disposed of an asset that had been depreciated, meaning like if you had a house that was a rental house that you were renting out to people, that house is being depreciated over time. They're reducing the value of it. If you sold that house, you have to notify your accountant of that because that's really important. If you had unemployment income, if you received any tax forms from any agencies, So there's a list of things that you need to kind of keep track of, and then they also have usually their annual tax planner or their questionnaire where they ask you all of these things as well. So it's great to provide them the information, but just know that everything gets translated to IRS forms, and they're going to hopefully be looking for that information in that format, in those categories, totaled up so they can just put it right on the form. That's going to be the best for them. If you do need to talk to your accountant, emails are the best, I think, because then you have the written record of everything that's going on and it gives them something to reference. Phone calls are not that good. We're all very busy people. We can't remember conversations that well or remember to get back to people, and when we do, we don't always remember what it was for. Written definitely works a lot better. So I encourage you to use that principle, and keep in mind that when it is time to do your taxes, if you don't have an accountant, let me know. I can introduce you to somebody. I don't necessarily just recommend going online and saying accountants, specifically because your scenario isn't always going to be a good fit for the first person you call, and you're not necessarily sure the right questions to ask. So one thing that you can do if you are calling around and you're just thinking about, finding an accountant for yourself, you want to ask questions like, basically, how much is it going to cost me? I've heard of a regular tax return costing anywhere from $300 to $2,000 for basically the same return, just depending on the firm. Some firms that are very large, have very high profile accountants working for them, they're going to charge $400 an hour. Other people that are maybe just one person working out of a small shop or working from home, they might be charging $150 an hour. If you have property that you own in other states, or you have income coming in from other states, not all accountants are familiar with working with all the other states. Accountants don't necessarily always know how to deal with cryptocurrency. They don't always know how to deal with international related income and expenses. So you just kind of need to know what the right questions are to interview and ask. And then also a lot of accountants will offer some kind of free consultation. Even if they require a paid consultation, it still might be worth it for you just to make sure it's a good fit personality-wise, because in the accounting world, it's a relationship business. We tend to work with the same people year after year. And if you go to somebody one year and you're not real happy with the results that you got, then you're going to switch around. It's tough to get somebody to get to know you that way. So be careful, be choosy, pick somebody that's a good fit for you personality-wise, income-wise, experience-wise. Sometimes geographically, accountants in this state are going to know a lot more about your situation than somebody who's across the country, who you got referred to by a friend. Another thing that I think is really important to know about working with accountants is that there's senior accountants, there's junior accountants, there's entry-level accountants, and depending on you and your scenario, you might get any one of those. So if you are feeling like maybe the person that you're dealing with isn't giving you the service that you need, don't be afraid to ask to talk to their supervisor and let them know what's going on, and maybe just explain that the person you're dealing with doesn't feel like the right fit for you. See if maybe they have somebody else. I can't tell you the number of times somebody's come to me to say, this bookkeeper I'm working with doesn't seem to be getting it, and I say, I'm happy to help, and then they say, I just talked to my other bookkeeper and they said they want another shot at it because they're going to try harder this time. It's a really common thing that happens with people. So just know that, if you're not getting what you're looking for, you should ask for what you need. Maybe you can pay more and get somebody who's more responsive, or maybe it's going to be better if you do Zoom calls rather than phone calls or emails. You just got to try different things because everybody's a little bit different. So with that being said, I want to encourage you to get everything done early, on time at least, and don't forget to pay your self-employment tax. Small business owners so often miss this very important point. What is self-employment tax? What is business tax? Sometimes people tell me I have to pay my business taxes. So we're going to talk about Washington State because that's where I am. The only business tax we have here in Washington is B&O tax. And with that return, it's a combined return where you also report sales tax, use tax, litter tax. There's one return that you file with the Department of Revenue. Some people consider that their business taxes. File local or your city taxes, those are also business taxes. But a lot of times you see people make a payment to the IRS and they call that their business taxes. If you're self-employed and you're filing a Schedule C, or you're filing an 1120S, or you're filing a 1065 partnership return, none of those have business taxes. The only returns that have taxes is a 1120C corporate return. All the other ones are what's called pass-through, and that means that all of the profits from those companies passes through to the shareholders. So when you write a check to the IRS out of your business account, now if you have employees, that makes sense because you have to pay payroll taxes to the IRS. But if you don't have employees and you're writing a check to the IRS, that's probably an owner's draw. It's probably your personal taxes from your 1040 return that you're paying. That's not actually a business expense. For it to be a business expense, it would have to be your corporate taxes or your B&O tax that you're paying out. So that's a really important point, because on your tax return where you list taxes, if you're including your payments to the IRS on that, that's a disallowed expense that in an audit would definitely be discovered. And that can be kind of a big number. So be careful about that one. Also remember that accountants want to see what they call a balance sheet, beginning and ending. The balance sheet means the balance in your accounts. So your checking account, your savings account, your CD, your line of credit, your credit cards. They want to know how much was in there at the beginning of the year and how much is in there now. If you have inventory, how much inventory did you have at the beginning of the year and how much do you have now? Those changes to your balance sheet are very important for your accountant. So you have to make sure to keep track of that very closely as well. And I think with that, I'm going to stop. And if you have any other additional questions, please let me know. My name is Russ. I'm with Sound Bookkeepers. I'm happy to have a chance to present this to you, and I wish you well.